When Tamar Braxton first went live asking, "What's the drama? Somebody tell me what's the drama," people laughed, dropped emojis in the chat, and assumed she was just being over the top as usual. But that moment hit differently. This wasn't playful Tamar, this wasn't a joke, this was Tamar genuinely confused, shaken, and spiraling in front of thousands. She confessed that she had gone to bed and woken up to find her entire life flipped upside down overnight. She admitted she probably shouldn't have said anything in the first place, that fear got the best of her, that she felt cornered, scared, and painfully alone. What she didn't seem to realize was that in her frantic search for answers, she had become the very thing she was asking about. She wasn't just in the drama, she was the drama. The timeline of Tamar's collapse unfolded at lightning speed. Within a single week, she had allegedly cancelled her album, threatened to leave the public eye forever, accused her family of betrayal, reignited old feuds, and still managed to go live almost daily to pour gasoline on the fire. Fans who once defended her began to whisper in frustration, "We love her, but we don't even know what's real anymore." Reports began circulating that the situation had reached such a critical point that Toni Braxton was prepared to force Tamar into a mental health facility if she refused help. It wasn't an idle threat. Sources close to the family whispered that the Braxtons had reached the end of their patience, but Tamar wasn't slowing down. She posted on the Shade Room in response to a story, typing out a farewell that read like, "A goodbye letter, y'all won. There's no more album. I'm going to my farm. You'll never hear from me again. I'm sorry for everything." Fans flooded the comments with heartbreak emojis, prayers, and skepticism. Because if there's one thing the public had learned about Tamar, it was that her promises to disappear rarely lasted. Sure enough, she reappeared days later, not quietly, not humbly, but with even more fire than before. What made this spiral even harder to understand was the inconsistency. Tamar had claimed she nearly died, saying she suffered a fractured nose and missing teeth. Yet there was no clear explanation of what happened, no medical statement, no receipts, just fragments of a terrifying story. Then, almost immediately after painting herself as broken and bruised, she was promoting her new EP, Heartbreak Retrograde, complete with big names attached, including Mendices and even Funky Dineva. The contradiction was glaring. That's when suspicion grew. People remembered that Funky had been with Tamar before the so-called accident. The internet being what it is, it didn't take long for rumors to bloom. What if Funky had something to do with it? What if he was the reason she ended up hurt? Social media doesn't wait for evidence. The narrative spread like wildfire. And suddenly Funky found himself accused of being violent, manipulative, or worse. Thousands filled his comment sections, demanding answers. Funky eventually addressed it in his own video, his tone sharp and cutting. He said at first it was just a few comments, something he brushed off. But then it grew. He logged into his platform one evening and saw over 7,000 people waiting in his chat, spamming questions about Tamar. They weren't asking about his show, his opinions, or the latest gossip. They wanted to know what he did to Tamar. That lady, he called her, refusing to even speak her name, claiming she had abandoned him at the exact moment he needed her most. He insisted that after leaving V12, they had joined a group of friends for a night out, but he went home alone. He said he found out about Tamar's injuries on social media like everyone else. And yet, while fans dragged him online, Tamar stayed silent. She never stepped in to clear his name, never reassured the public that Funky was not to blame. To Funky, it was betrayal. He said Tamar watched it happen, saw the hate building, and chose not to stop it. When he confronted her privately, asking her to dispel the rumors, Tamar allegedly told him, "I'm lost. I'm confused. I didn't say anything. I'm in the hospital." That was her excuse. But Funky wasn't buying it. He pointed out that Tamar had found the time to post about being laid up in bed, found the energy to cut trailers for her EP, but somehow couldn't post one clear sentence saying he had nothing to do with her injuries. His voice dripped with bitterness as he said, "I was collateral damage and a cheap PR stunt." He called her selfish, accused her of not being a friend, and admitted he was deeply hurt, and the thing is, people agreed. Fans began piecing it together, whispering that Tamar might be stirring all this chaos to generate buzz for her project. The vagueness of her accident, the timing of her EP teaser, the silence about Funky, it all lined up too neatly. Add to that the rumors about her and Mendices, and the situation became even messier. People swore they had seen Tamar and Mendices together at an Atlanta lounge, looking far too close for comfort. Rumors of cuddling, late-night sightings, whispers of an affair, these spread across social media, fueling even more speculation. Tamar never addressed it, never denied it, never cleared it up. To Funky and her critics, that silence was intentional. They believed she was letting the gossip grow on purpose, letting people talk, letting her name trend. Tamar, for her part, swore she wasn't faking anything. She claimed her pain was real, her exhaustion was real, her decision to retreat to her farm was real. But fans couldn't ignore the cycle. She'd break down online, then bounce back with a new teaser. She'd swear she was gone forever, then reappear hours later. It was whiplash. And for some, it felt like déjà vu because this wasn't the first time. Just a year earlier, Tamar had pulled a similar act: fights with her sisters, threats to vanish, sudden returns. On camera, during family therapy, Tamar cut off Toni Braxton when the counselor asked about their relationship. Tamar accused her of not caring, of favoring the other sisters, of only calling when cameras were rolling. Towanda sat in silence, blindsided, while Tamar poured out years of resentment. That wasn't just reality TV. That was real, raw bitterness. After that, Tamar had shut down her social media accounts in a rage, only to return within days. In one now-deleted post, she called her family toxic, accused them of gaslighting her, and said she was going back into treatment. She claimed her marriage was hanging by a thread, that her life was in danger, that she should never have gone back to Braxton family values. Her posts were frantic, emotional, and alarming. Fans who once brushed off her meltdowns as Tamar being Tamar began to worry this was deeper, darker, and more dangerous. Then came the robbery. Tamar posted security footage from her apartment building showing a group of people ransacking her car. But it wasn't the robbery itself that shook people, it was the caption. Tamar wrote, "I got robbed at home. I'm not safe anywhere. I don't live anywhere. I don't feel safe anywhere or with anyone." Her words painted a picture of a woman spiraling into paranoia, feeling violated at every turn. Fans were torn between sympathy and exhaustion. Some begged her to log off and get help. Others accused her of feeding the chaos. At the same time, insiders claimed her sisters had drawn a hard line. Towanda and Toni Braxton reportedly refused to film with Tamar until she sought help. Even Toni, the peacemaker of the family, was said to be considering drastic intervention. For them, this wasn't just embarrassing, it was dangerous. They feared Tamar's meltdowns weren't just damaging her brand but also putting their family legacy at risk, but Tamar saw it differently. She saw her sister's refusal as betrayal. She claimed they didn't want her truth out, especially when it came to her niece Ashley's story. Tamar argued that Ashley had the right to speak, to tell her truth about the inappropriate behavior she endured. She accused her sisters of protecting their image instead of protecting their family. Tamar's defense of Ashley widened the rift, creating wounds that felt impossible to heal. Through all of this, the internet didn't let up. Funky's videos kept trending. Tamar's meltdowns kept circulating. And the rumors about Mendices refused to die down. It wasn't just a scandal anymore, it was a circus, and Tamar was at the center ring, whether she liked it or not. By the time Tamar's public unraveling hit its second wave, fans were no longer just watching, they were dissecting every move, every post, and every cryptic caption like detectives. What started as messy gossip had now turned into a full-blown case study in chaos. Tamar had become her own tabloid, and the story never stopped refreshing. One minute she was sobbing into her phone camera about betrayal, the next she was uploading polished clips hinting at new music. The contradictions were piling up, and even those who had once defended her with blind loyalty were whispering that this time, she might really be losing control. Inside the Braxton family, tensions had hit their boiling point. Towanda Braxton and Toni Braxton allegedly told producers flat out that they were done filming with Tamar until she agreed to treatment. They weren't bluffing this time. For years, they had allowed the cameras to capture screaming matches and tears, but now, with Tamar spinning out in real life, it was no longer just content, it was collateral damage. Even Toni Braxton, the sister who always tried to stay neutral and play peacemaker, was reaching her limit. Whispers spread that she was consulting lawyers, exploring what legal options existed if Tamar continued to refuse help. But Tamar didn't see any of it as love. She saw it as a setup. On her lives, she accused her sisters of gaslighting her, of plotting against her, of refusing to let her truth shine through. She dragged them as fake, as jealous, as uncaring, telling her audience that her family was toxic and always had been. She reminded fans of how they boycotted filming when she tried to include Ashley, her niece, to share her painful story of abuse. Tamar said they cared more about contracts and reputations than about Ashley's healing, and she refused to let them bury it. The fallout was ugly. Some fans sided with Tamar, praising her bravery for defending Ashley and accusing the Braxton sisters of sweeping too much under the rug. But others felt Tamar was using her niece's trauma as a weapon in her feud, airing family wounds for clout. The lines were drawn, and the Braxtons looked more divided than ever. Meanwhile, the streets of Atlanta were buzzing with a different kind of gossip. Tamar and Mendices were allegedly spotted again, this time looking cozy at a late-night lounge. Rumors of an affair grew louder, and Tamar's silence only made them stick. She didn't deny it, didn't address it, didn't even throw up a vague post to dismiss the whispers. To her critics, this was proof of what Funky Dineva had said all along, that Tamar loved to let the gossip grow, to let the noise build around her until she was trending again. Whether it was truth or lies didn't matter. The spectacle kept her name alive. Funky, on the other hand, wasn't done airing his grievances. In another scathing rant, he said Tamar had failed him, that while she was out here playing the victim, he was being crucified by her silence. He reminded people how thousands swarmed his platform demanding answers, how he was called dangerous, untrustworthy, even violent, all because Tamar refused to clear his name. His words cut like a knife. I wasn't the bad friend. You were. The fans were split down the middle. Some accused Funky of exploiting Tamar's breakdown for clicks. Others believed every word he said and turned on Tamar, calling her manipulative, selfish, and addicted to drama. The back and forth spilled across Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Every platform became a battlefield of opinions, receipts, and speculation. For Tamar, the storm was both her curse and her lifeline. She would cry about being broken and unsafe, claiming she had nowhere to live, no peace, no stability. She said she was constantly violated, constantly in fear. And yet, days later, she'd pop up in full glam, teasing her EP or throwing shade like nothing had happened. The contradictions were glaring. Some fans called it bipolar. Others called it PR. A few whispered it might be both, behind closed doors. The Braxtons were preparing for war. Tawanda and Trina were unmoved. Toni was rumored to be leading the charge for a family intervention, even if it meant dragging Tamar into treatment against her will. Sources close to the family said they had agreed. No more enabling, no more pretending, no more covering. It was time for drastic action, because Tamar wasn't just risking her career anymore, she was risking her life. But Tamar, in her own eyes, wasn't the problem. Everyone else was. She saw her sisters as snakes, her friends as opportunists, the blogs as vultures. In her mind, she was the only one telling the truth, the only one being real, the only one brave enough to call it like it was. And as long as she had an audience, she wasn't going to stop talking. By the time Tamar's spiral reached its final stage, the line between performance and reality had completely vanished. She was no longer just giving drama, she was living inside of it, breathing it, and bleeding it across every platform. Her name trended almost daily, but not for music, not for success, not for the talent that once defined her. It was for meltdowns, accusations, and chaos. What made it worse was that the more her sisters pulled back, the more Tamar lashed out. It was as if the distance from her family only fueled her need to perform for the public. Her latest lives were the most disturbing yet. Tamar sobbed on camera, pacing her room, telling thousands of strangers that nobody loved her, that her family had betrayed her, that she had been left to drown alone. She shouted that she was fighting demons bigger than herself, that she couldn't trust anyone, not even the sisters who shared her blood. And then, just minutes later, she would flip, clapping back at critics, laughing at memes, insisting she was fine. It was emotional whiplash, the kind that left fans shaken, unsure if they were watching a breakdown or a reality show with no producers to yell, "Cut." The Braxton sisters, meanwhile, were uniting behind closed doors in a way fans hadn't seen in years. Tawanda Braxton and Trina Braxton were firm in their stance: no filming, no collaboration, no fake unity until Tamar got help. Toni Braxton, who had always carried the burden of peacemaker, had allegedly reached her limit. Sources claimed Toni had begun real discussions about legal action, guardianship, conservatorship, or at the very least, a family intervention. They weren't talking about saving Tamar's career anymore. They were talking about saving Tamar from herself, but Tamar couldn't see it that way. To her, their silence wasn't love, it was betrayal. She accused them of turning their backs on her, of choosing fame and contracts over family, of silencing the truth she was trying to expose. She reminded fans again of her niece Ashley's story, claiming that the family had buried her pain to protect their brand. Tamar swore she wouldn't let it stay hidden, even if it meant tearing down every last bridge she had left. That insistence, though noble to some, looked reckless to others. Fans were divided. Half praised Tamar as a warrior for justice, a woman refusing to be silenced. The other half saw her as a manipulator, dragging her niece's trauma into her personal war for sympathy. It was messy, heartbreaking, and explosive, and while the Braxtons were bracing for intervention, the outside noise only got louder. Funky Dineva continued his tirades, doubling down on claims that Tamar had used him as collateral in her chaos. He said she let him be destroyed online just to stir drama for an album that might never even see the light of day. His words cut deep: "You let me get crucified while you sat back and laughed. I didn't deserve that. I was your friend, and you threw me to the wolves." At the same time, whispers about Mendices refused to die down. Rumors of late-night cuddles, secret meetings, and cozy lounge sightings spread across Atlanta like wildfire. Tamar's silence only made it worse. She didn't deny, she didn't confirm, she just let it fester, the same way she let every storm fester until it consumed her whole. The impact was undeniable. Brands started to distance themselves. Producers debated whether Tamar was worth the risk. Networks quietly considered pulling back, afraid that filming her might cross from entertainment into exploitation. For the first time, people weren't just asking, "What's the drama?" They were asking if Tamar's career, her family, and even her mental health could survive the drama at all, and yet, Tamar didn't stop. She couldn't stop. Attention had become her lifeline, the only thing keeping her from fading into the silence she feared more than anything. So she kept going live. She kept posting. She kept feeding the very machine that was tearing her apart. Behind the scenes, whispers of a final family decision grew louder. Some insiders said Toni and the others were ready to take full legal control, to step in with papers that would strip Tamar of her autonomy until she got help. Others claimed they were ready to cut ties completely, to let her spiral without dragging the rest of them down. Either way, it was clear that the Braxton family was heading for a collision point that no amount of cameras, contracts, or public sympathy could prevent, and that's where the story stood: Tamar, alone on live, crying and laughing in the same breath. Her sisters, plotting an intervention that could either save her life or destroy their bond forever. Her friends, burned and bitter. The blogs, eating it all up. The fans, torn between pity and disgust. Nobody knew how it would end. Would Tamar finally accept help and rebuild her life? Or would she keep spiraling until there was nothing left to save? One thing was certain, this wasn't the end of Tamar Braxton. It was just another cliffhanger in a saga that refused to let her, or us, rest. Because with Tamar, the drama never ends.